city engineer. We can have city personnel. City engineer has been serving on that. A resident, Haley Morgan, she has responded. Okay. Who am I drawing a blank on here?
The school representative.
Oh, yeah,
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly, representative from the school who, see on, tech.
Is he on tech?
Yeah, tech. So it's involved in other things and familiar with what goes on. If there's any questions about really what does a plat committee do, I would prefer maybe Kevin or somebody give a more detailed explanation, but if there isn't anybody that's hankering to have 11 a.m. Monday meetings and is agreeable to the 5 that have been doing this to continue, we can go ahead and acclaim that to be the decision. Is there anybody that wants to have an experience on a plat committee? You're all looking so eager. So, all right, we will continue with the same representation for the plat committee. Item next on our agenda is an amendment to the rules of procedure for this body. If staff could explain the rules that we have and why it is that they are changing.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of history as to exactly why this became a rule many years ago, but we had a local rule where that stated that 2 of the 3 city council appointments to this body had to be sitting city council members. That's not a statutory requirement. So the suggestion here is to modify our local rule so it really truly aligns with statute, and really just says that the legislative body of the city appoints 3 members who are residents of the easy for me to say, municipality, and no further restrictions placed upon who those people are or aren't. So.
Does that question, because I had asked Jamie about this and she might have been confused, does that mean that potentially all 3 of those members could be city councilors? Or, because her understanding was, it was that only, that the reason that they had 2 is it could only be 1 by statute, but she may have been misspoken. I'm not opposed either way. I'm curious, I had seen the change in the
Well, it
draft.
says they're not elected officials or employees of the city.
But that's been
Paragraph
stricken.
A. Not in paragraph A.
Right, that's the 4 residents for the mayor. But then in number 10B is specific to city council appointments. And it strikes not an elected official appointed to the city, which means that it could be up to 3 city councilors if,
There's nothing prohibiting
okay,
it.
I'm not against it, I just was, I would ask the question for clarification.
You're correct. Theoretically, yes. In my experience, I could doubt seeing that ever happening,
Sure, right.
but theoretically,
It could be 0, all right? I mean,
Yeah,
it could
sure.
all be, it could all be non-council members as well.
This goes back so far, I don't even remember how it started, and I first was on this body in September of 2000. And it was a thing back then, and it always seemed like it was more of a, just kind of a, nothing formalized,
Just a
but it
culture.
was just a,
Yeah.
but I guess it was maybe codified somewhere along the line. The question I would have is, we actually did have 2 when I was on council for 1-year terms, but this now means that Victor could be here for 4 years
Yeah, right.
without having to be
Because
reappointed.
again, statute doesn't limit this to 1-year terms. That was a local rule.
Right, and that also is stricken, so we would be stuck, having the privilege of Victor for
whatever.
This doesn't say that 1 council member has to be on it.
Correct.
So if the council gets recommendations from us and they get confused and they want clarification, technically, there's nobody there to help with the clarification.
I suspect that's
The
why.
president has to attend all the council meetings in case that happens.
Worse things have happened probably, but
I suspect that's why this rule was put into place, was to ensure that there is some sort of kind of liaison between the 2 bodies.
I always refer to it as the cross-pollination rule.
Yeah.
That we try to have bodies with various representatives that are parts of more than one, so that there can be reports back and forth. provide clarifications.
Well, the good news or bad news is I'm the one crazy enough to wanna do it, so. To be that cross pollinator.
Happy to have you. So, this is in front of us to adopt today. This is the only thing, right? There isn't any other red
That's right.
text.
Yep, that's right.
So if everybody is in agreement with this, we can go ahead and approve this change to our rules of procedure. Is there a motion and a second to do so?
So moved.
Motion by Andre Maui, seconded by
I'll second.
Dr. Keen. Everybody voice okay on this, Ashley, or do we need a roll call vote? Everybody in favor of adopting the new rules of procedure, please say aye. Aye. Is there anybody opposed? We now have adopted the change to our rules of procedure. Item next is approval of the minutes of the December 4th, 2023 meeting. The minutes were posted online, and I assume everybody has taken a look at them instead of tasking staff with what turned out to be frequently a very lengthy exercise in trying to actually write up minutes. Since we began recording things, we now just milestone dates or times of things that are in the recording, and the recordings themselves function as our minutes. So if you didn't look closely and are wondering if there's any other minutes, this is it. So you don't have to worry too much about the content. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the December 4th, 2023 meeting? It does not really matter if you were here and present in that or not, because we're not so much approving them as we are accepting them into the record.
So moved.
Moved by Victor McCarty,
Second.
seconded by, that was Mike Neal, right? Yes, sir. We have all present tonight, so we can do this on a voice vote. Is everybody in favor of approving the minutes? Please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Minutes are approved. I'll take a moment right here to interject that we do have an option to attend virtually. During the pandemic, when there were emergency procedures in place, a lot of everything that we did was very virtual. City adopted, once the state's allowances went away, opportunities for us to attend meetings virtually, which had, prior to the pandemic, never been a thing. If there is a member present virtually as opposed to in the room, we wouldn't have been able to do a voice vote on that, because we have to have a picture on the screen and be able to hear and see what's going on with the member or members that were attending virtually. You can't go ad nauseum, meeting after meeting after meeting, attending virtually. There does have to be a in-building presence every third meeting or more. But if you have further questions on the procedures and allowances for that, check with staff if
And there
there is
has to
some
be a-
conflict.
I was gonna say, there
Oh,
has
yeah,
to be a
They
quorum
have to have
in the
a
room.
live quorum in the room. So of the 9 of us, we could have 4
Fresh.
attending virtually, but 5 of us still have to be here. And votes all have to be a majority of the body, not the majority of the members present. So if
Correct.
some meeting, there's only 5 of us, we still take all 5 of us to approve whatever we have in front of us. So, any other questions regarding those items? If staff would then move on to reviewing the rules and procedures for tonight's meeting.
So this evening, this is a workshop meeting. So just some general rules of procedures for workshop meetings. The department will introduce the petition stating when the item was last before the planning commission. The planning commission and the petitioner will then discuss changes made to the ordinance using an issue list or a staff overview as a guide for the discussion. Also, once the discussion has been finished, the department will summarize the final changes that are expected to be made prior to the petition returning for a recommendation before this commission. So general rules of conduct, please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Also, please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. And also, lastly, we would like to remind those attending virtually to Please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thank you. That's all.
When we began workshop meetings, you had prepared an undated sheet of APC workshop meetings, what to expect. I don't know if you still have that around. I think this was a pretty helpful document. If you don't have it, I can scan,
Yeah, we can pull that back up.
distribute it,
Send that
but
back, that's a good idea.
I think you will each benefit from having this to kind of help the understanding of what it is that we do in a workshop meeting as opposed to a public hearing meeting or those that occur at City Hall. So, moving on, we have 3 items on a consent agenda. Consent agenda items have all been deemed compliant with everything that they need to be compliant with by staff, and we are obliged to approve them. There is no discussion at the time of the meeting on consent agenda items. The agenda is published on the Thursday before our Monday meetings. If there are any questions regarding consent agenda items, that is the time to call whoever it is that's on the staff report handling that particular petition item and bring up whatever it is that you might have as far as concerns. Could modify whether or not it stays on the consent agenda or not. We're probably all familiar enough with public meetings to understand that, but in the event there was anything that somebody looked at, it's kind of a first meeting, one-time opportunity. Were there any concerns that you didn't feel that you needed to bring up before this meeting? Or was the consent agenda okay in everybody's eyes here? So, all right, so we have a motion from Victor McCarty to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Andre. Oops. Everybody in favor, oh wait, consent, if staff would please call the roll.
So, Mr. Bunkerfist?
Aye.
Mr. Orke?
Yes.
Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Dr. Keen?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Mooney?
Yes.
And Mr. Neal?
Yes. Okay, consent agenda is approved. That takes us now to the main item for this evening, the workshop item, which is petition 2306-PUD-07. Claiborne Farms, also now known as Kimblewick, Phase 2. It's PUD that is expanding, and staff can give us a intro, and then the petitioner can bring us up to date on other changes that we need to know about before we can discuss.
Yeah, so let's give a quick rundown of, I guess, where we're at with this project. So, this project was introduced at City Council last year in May. Had its public hearing in June of last year, went to a workshop in July of last year, and it requested an extension in October of last year. So it's kind of been sitting idle at this point. So at this point, it is about 16 acres on the southwest corner of 156th and Town. Essentially, it's just an extension of the existing residential community that Kimblewick already exists today over there. And I'll just hand it off to the petitioners at this point to provide updates, I guess, at this point.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening. For the record, my name is John Dobashewitz. I'm a land use professional with the law firm of Nelson and Frankenberger, and we represent the petitioner, Pulte Homes of Indiana. Rex Ramage and Melissa Gerard with Pulte are both here, would be able to answer questions that you may have after our presentation. Our goal this evening was to re-socialize the Plan Commission because of the new membership with the request. We did receive a favor recommendation from the committee back in July. As Ryan indicated, we had originally submitted in May with an introduction, had a public hearing July, I believe the 17th plus or minus was our committee meeting, and then requested an extension and are now back in front of the Plan Commission for additional consideration. We plan on presenting at your meeting on February 5th. Staff has asked and we've agreed to, and I think it may be a requirement when you ask for an extension, is to renotice the surrounding property owners, even though I'll walk you through the adjustments that we've made already to date for the neighbors to the north in particular, and then those around the south perimeter of the site. They'll get notice of the meeting on February the 5th, and in the event that the Plan Commission feels like those items have been addressed to their satisfaction, we would request a recommendation on February 5th, after the conclusion of the public meeting and any additional questions the commission may have. But I'm gonna stand up and walk through this real briefly, and this is information that was posted with the agenda. But to pull everybody back into where we're at, if you're familiar with the space, this is identified on the zoning map as Claiborne Farms, but has been developed as Kimblewick by name and planning. Sycamore Glen is a subdivision that's off 159th Street, where the streets are in, but I don't believe any houses have begun in that space. Westchester here to our catty corner to our north and east. I think all but a couple of the houses are developed in this section that is wrapped around by the golf course. Westchester is all built out today. Liberty Ridge is all built out today. The courtyards at Westfield are under development by Epcon, and Pulte has constructed most of the houses here north of 151st Street and has begun to build a number of houses in this section of the development to the south. This aerial is about a year old, but maybe the most recent available aerial still at this time, so there may not be an update. I think staff may have touched on this. We're approximately 16 acres and currently zoned to AGSF1. The surrounding properties you can see here are all PUDs for those members of the Planning Commission who are new. Most new residential or commercial developments when the community come in as planned unit developments. It allows the staff to tailor with the developer the suit, if you will, and for the Planning Commission, their input to be reflected in the ordinance that ultimately comes in front of the council for adoption consideration. This is just a blow up of that same slide that shows the location of the real estate. Again, Westchester to our east, surrounded predominantly by Kimblewick on the west and to the south. This was the plan that was originally proposed and went out with our public notices, and we got a public hearing on this matter in June, and there was concern about most of these homes live front to back, meaning they all have outdoor living space on the back, and there was concern about noise, light, and other items that the neighbors to the north didn't prefer, as well as the buffer along the north. This showed a 40-foot buffer and no path access over to Town Road, and this is an existing lift station. If you drive down Town Road, you can't miss it. Not that it smells, but you can't miss it. It's surrounded by a chain link fence, and it's not very sightly, but we're not here to pick on that today. The proposal was for 43 additional lots, which resulted in a net of 24. So Kimblewick was designed and originally approved back in 2019 to be on aggregate less than 2 homes per acre, which the proposed development still is. We've got a net 24 increase. The density actually comes down a fraction. It's probably 1.98 now rather than 2.0. It was approved for 500 lots on 495 acres. Not 495 acres, 245 acres, 490. So concern about this, concern about the buffer and the distance, concern about the activity on the outside of the lots. And Pulte went back to the drawing board and came back with this, which is our current proposal. And there's several modifications that they made. One is they pulled the lots away from the north perimeter where previously there was a 40-foot common area, which is what's required under the ordinance as a buffer when you have these style lots next to existing larger lots. So we made it 85 feet. It's an 85-foot setback now rather than a 40-foot setback along the south. They reoriented the lots east to west, and that took the outdoor living spaces and internalized them, so we didn't have that light in the evening, we didn't have that potential noise in the evening and other activity that might be on the site. Again, if you're unfamiliar, Kimblewick is an age-restricted community, so how much noise? Not a lot of kids, unless they're grandkids coming over to visit. Kids can't live here, it's under a HOPA restriction, the whole neighborhood is, it's no kids. Have to be 55 and older as a resident of the community, at least one person living in the house, so. We added an additional path right here, and that's gonna serve 2 purposes. It's gonna serve for site construction during the interim, and then a path that people can get out. One of the things that they felt was a advantage was here is this path would be designed so folks who have golf carts could get out on the Town Road path and up to and across over to the golf course in the future when additional improvements are made to Town Road, so that was seen as an advantage. Additionally, There's not a lot of room in front of that lift station, so we pulled the path and dedicated right of way behind it so that the path could get over to our north perimeter. Without this accommodation of additional dedication and the path being in this location, there's only about a 10-foot space between the pavement edge today and the chain link fence that you see there. And we didn't want to pull pedestrians out towards the roadway, so we added for that accommodation as well. There's about an 85-foot setback between Town Road and the frontage today. If you've driven past the site and you've seen the four-board black fence that's out there today, the same thing is gonna be just extended across that frontage. So the appearance when you're driving down Town Road today and you see Kimblewick is gonna be the same experience you're gonna have continued on to the north in terms of the landscaping program, mounding, and black four-board fence. The result here of this redesign actually resulted in one additional lot, so there's a proposed gross increase of the number of lots to 44, and a net increase across the entire 260 plus or minus acre site to 25 lots rather than 24. A couple of the other things they did is they went and they had Judd Scott, who's an arborist locally in Indianapolis out of Carmel, came in and evaluated this tree line and made suggestions about the trees that we may be able to add in deference to the questions that were asked by the neighbors to the north. And additionally, they made commitments that are included in the red line version of the ordinance on stormwater improvement. There's a resident who lives here that has some ponding in their backyard. I'm assuming they're, I think they're on well and septic, or at least septic, because the sanitary runs out in front of their house. But they had some ponding nonetheless here, and Pulte's agreed to pick that up and carry it south and over to our drainage that would further run into the golf course and down. So go on to our next slide here. This shows the modification that was made. This was the previous, this is the current proposal in terms of the lot configuration, buffer depth. We're preserving all the trees along the north property line. There's one caveat to that. Today, that whole space is within a sanitary sewer easement. It's a very large sanitary sewer force main that goes over to the plant that's located off of Little Eagle Creek and 166th Street. But nonetheless, there is an existing relatively deep, large pipe that's in the ground today. We don't think that if the city were to come back, or not the city, but citizens today would come back, they'd likely pull that onto the south side, not to the north, but there's an existing tree line there nonetheless. We can't guarantee it stays forever because it's in that easement, but we've agreed to provide, and this next slide will show it, additional tree plantings on the adjacent lot, and the blue line is the storm sewer that we would pull over onto their lot. There's a condition regarding that those additional trees and that storm system that would be installed. Pulte's obligated to do it provided we can reach an agreement with the neighbor to allow us to come on their property and do it. And we always write in that what if they move, what if somebody doesn't like it? We've got to have it in writing. We just can't, we can commit to you, we'll do it. They would be not obligated, they would have to allow or agree for us to be able to come on the real estate and actually implement that. But Rex met on site with the owner. This is a view from their backyard into our site. You can see their house in the distance beyond this relatively heavy tree line. Their lot is also pretty heavily, I wouldn't say heavily wooded, but it is wooded today. So it provides some additional buffering and screening. You can see the existing lift station here along the town road frontage. And how we would pull the stormwater into our system and get it off the back of their lot today. Likewise, these are all occupied homes within Kimblewick to our south. The neighbors there, a few of them, they got together, they reached out to Rex went out and met with them. What you see in black and white, those are all plantings that were already part of the plan for installation within that common area. And Pulte's agreed to plant 25 additional trees within that space. And I think our agreement's written that Pulte would get with the neighbors and find out what type of trees that they want installed. And based on the agreement that they would reach, they would go with the type of trees, whether that be ornamental, shade trees or evergreens. That wasn't worked out, but there'd be 25 additional plantings on there. Not that a buffer's necessary, but it's a change. The folks here, who built homes in here. This was currently owned by a church. Not that a church might not be the best. A church might get built there and parking lots and other outdoor items might get developed there, but nonetheless, it was a change. So Pulte agreed, additional landscaping along the backside of their existing lots. This was a slide that we put together just to show you, kind of some context. There's 80 feet roughly between that house and the property line, another 85 feet that I talked about in terms of a buffer. This house is 244 feet away, and then the closest next neighbor is approximately 1,300 feet to their house. The building out here is an outbuilding, or not a primary structure or someone's home on the site. So you can see how this plan fits into that surrounding context. And that really concludes our presentation on the request. I think I'll come back and we can leave it on this plan that shows the revised plan. Again, we're sending out notice to the same people who got notice of the public hearing back in June. And they would be able to attend the meeting on the 5th. And in the event that we've satisfied all the plan commission's comments or requests, we would request that they consider forwarding the matter on to the city council at their next meeting on February 12th. But that's just giving you an idea where we're at. It's up to the plan commission once you receive, if you do any additional public comments or anything like that. Do you want us to come back to the workshop again and go forward? But Pulte feels like they did a pretty good job listening to the surrounding neighbors on what additional things could be added. And if we've done that to the plan commission satisfaction, we would request that you forward it on after the meeting on the 5th of February.
Thank you. Workshop meetings we hold in this building, in this room, because the intent is it's more of a open dialogue, a little less formal and structured, more casual, so we can bring up whatever our concerns are that we feel might need either added understanding for ourselves or things that we might feel that the developer needs to consider further and additional things to do or to do differently. So we'll go ahead and open up to Plan Commission comments, concerns, questions, whatever it is that's on your mind that's relative to this petition.
John, the additional trees on the south border, excuse me, did the arborist think those were a good idea as far as, I am no arborist, trust me, but it looks like it's already so dense down there. Are we making a problem, or did you think it was a wise move?
It's not gonna be a problem.
Okay.
The trees kind of get clustered in certain areas at planting, and so we went out with paint and tape and measured everything off.
So they made sense from a tree's perspective, they'll be healthy, and we're not just trying to cram in more dots on a page.
Correct.
Okay.
They are projected to be located in the open area, so to
Yeah.
speak. So no, it will not be a problem.
Continuing on that same thought, the green dots you had described as to be determined amongst the residents and your team.
Tree species, yes.
There's two different images in the black and white. Some are round, some are
Correct.
squiggly.
Yep.
I'm assuming we're looking at those delineating deciduous and conifers.
Yes.
Today, the black and white is today, the ones that, spider web, if you will, those are evergreens, the others are shade trees.
Okay, that's what I was interpreting it to be, just wanted to kind of clarify it. I think you were gonna possibly chime in as well.
Sorry, I just had a quick question. You were going from 40 feet to 85 feet on the, and what was the purpose of doing that? To accommodate what?
So the neighbors to the north were concerned about noise. Now, it's two couples, they're probably around their 30s. The second group of neighbors to the north are.
The neighbors that live?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, the first neighbor, it's like they have a detached garage that faces their home and then they have their house. And then the second parcel to the north is another set of neighbors that we had met with.
Okay.
Both of those couples, yeah. So there's the garage and then there's the actual home. And this is the first parcel. And then they have neighbors to the north of them. Who are the, quite frankly, the two of the three people that we had never really heard from. So their concern was, you're putting houses closer to me, and oh, by the way, that's the back porch or back patio of those people. We're gonna hear them when we're outside. And so we said, okay, so buffering and landscaping and setbacks is kind of your primary concern, how do we try to design around that? So we actually extended the streets a little further north, did not fan the cul-de-sac bulbs with lots to the north of it, just kind of kept it to the east and west of it to create that added setback, that added distance away from their home.
Got it.
To lessen the impact.
Thank you.
And that'll be concern, we hear a lot of neighbors that are existing, what kind of buffering is gonna be provided for any new development coming in. And so I remember these conversations that were had last year, and I just wanna say, once again, just thank you for bending over backwards to meet the needs of the existing neighbors. And I remember one conversation in particular, was the trail conversation, and because the neighbors that are existing, they wanted that possible amenity. And so for you adding that in there, it just, again, being a great neighbor to those that are already existing, so that way they too can indulge in future amenities.
Thank you.
So to stay on a tree theme,
Sure.
the 85-foot buffer had a tree line added to it when it was 40 or 45, but you took that away now with it being 80, 85?
So I think the idea there was, we are required by ordinance to plant so many trees in our buffer yard. And so there is the idea, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, there is the idea of if there were existing mature trees that we could keep, that we would allow, that we'd be allowed a credit. And that is something that's allowed by ordinance today.
Right.
So that's something that, when we were looking at everything, we were like, well, this doesn't make any sense, because if we were to plant them, then they could get torn out by the utility. So therefore, we were seeking a credit for the existing mature trees instead of planting.
And in between first and second iteration, Judd Scott came out, evaluated what was there, determined that it was trees that were worth saving and preserving as part of the landscaping plan. So we eliminated the additional row because we had identified the row on the plan because it would meet the ordinance requirement, because we hadn't gone to the step of first having it evaluated. When we had come back with a secondary plat or development plan, staff would have reviewed it and said, okay, you have these trees here, they meet the standard, we wouldn't have had to provide that second row. So we completed the task that the plan commission would have not seen by having Judd come out and do that in the interim, so we could identify the revised height on the revised plan.
And still on the note of trees, I believe in this 85-foot setback without needing to add additional trees excessively or whatever, just utilizing what's already there is a better route to take, because as you mentioned, with the pipes that are already underneath, say they need maintenance in the future or whatever, well, then you have to tear out all the trees. So this allows for that possibility in the future if it is so needed. Just one clarification question, if you said this, I apologize. So you went from 43 units and then readjusted to 44, is that correct? And then to achieve that increased density, I see you extended your roadways some from what they previously were and kind of changed the iteration some, is that correct?
Yes, and from 700 to 750,
Okay, thank you.
cul-de-sac line.
We had a brief discussion about the allowable length of that cul-de-sac, and that's all been
Oh, it's
vetted
vetted.
and within requirements are satisfactory to the first responders.
600 feet would have otherwise been the standard, and we're asking for 750.
Those that have to drive the big things back there are okay with this.
And the idea too is, with the path that's being permanent,
Yes.
that would be usable by emergency personnel. So it's a
It's twofer.
correct. Right.
Other questions, comments, concerns?
Just a comment, all the things that I recalled as pain points before, and it did take some time in going back through the exhibits, because my memory was pretty foggy from that many months ago, but I think you've done a good job of addressing all that. Victor was kind of saying something similar earlier, as far as I think you've really listened to the neighbors and taken care of all the things that we discussed here as well, so thank you for that.
I appreciate everybody's time this evening. I don't know that you guys don't take a vote or anything. We'll just see you back on the 5th and get notice.
Is there
what typically happens, and unless I missed it, there really isn't a big ask of any sort tonight, but staff will be the note takers, because we have to be the participants, but at the end of the discussions that we have at these workshop meetings with any petitioners, any issues, concerns that need to be further addressed, staff will recap those before we all break up and move on. So, do we have some notes that you can share with us, or?
I mean, at this point, all I have is kind of what we talked about our discussions. There wasn't really a ton to take away and change from what I gathered from our discussion, so.
And we did come to the plan commission with that workshop meeting in July with a recommendation to bring it back to the full plan commission. There was an outstanding set of issues that staff had that we needed to address before we revisited that, because we got it all to you before the committee meeting, workshop, sorry.
Yeah, so.
I would agree, Ron, I mean, I didn't hear anything tonight that warrants further revisions. If we're wrong on that, please speak now. But it sounded like a lot of clarification kinds of questions tonight, not a lot of asking for additional modifications.
No action
So,
items.
yeah.
I concur with Andre and Victor. I was in very good shape mentally with this the last time you were in front of us. Understand that you had whatever it was that you needed to do that warranted coming back, and this has probably been the biggest benefit for the new membership to get up to speed on the history and what comes next. So,
I think it looks nice.
Thank you.
I didn't commit it to memory, and I don't know what Westfield's rules are. If anybody on the plan commission has a question, I'm sure you can find my contact information, send us an email. If we do get an email from a plan commission member, we'll usually copy any type of response onto staff so they're aware that there's communication, but I think communication is permitted. It's not encouraged, but if you, so I'm seeing Kevin, cause I didn't know. If you have a question, please get it to staff, they'll forward it on to us, and we're gonna get you a response before the meeting, cause we don't show up to meetings with.
Yeah, I think there's still,
unresolved items, or
our
try not to.
preference is that stuff kind of funnels through us. I know Mayor Willis has a little more open policy on that, so.
It's different in every
I'm certainly
jurisdiction,
not
so there's no rule.
But yeah, we think it's best practice just to kind of keep it all funneled through.
And
we had a
we'll-
lot of
and we'll go with that.
discussions over the last year, or about a year ago, about ex parte communications. We're probably all mostly familiar with that term. I definitely think it's a good idea to channel this through staff. If there is a need for dialogue with any of us and the petitioners, then a staff member will coordinate whatever
good.
that happens
And
to need to be able to gain the understanding you're looking for.
And the reason I mention that, we, Nelson and Frankenberger, assist a lot of different petitioners with plans, so, you'll see us here, on occasion.
Or every meeting.
Several items in a different.
So talk to you about that.
This is the world this is the world I've lived in for the last 30 years, so it's great, it's fun. I told you I was gonna take my turn, and, I've been a 18-year resident of the city of Westfield. I got adult kids, and a 6-year-old granddaughter who lives with us, which is another story, but, all good. And, known Dr. Keene and Bob and Victor for way long, that's a long time. Again, I appreciate your time this evening, really enjoyed doing this, and it's glad to see some additional perspective and new faces on the plan commission. If you have questions, route them through staff, we'll do everything we can to get you an answer before a meeting, so we don't wanna show up, and we wanna make efficient use of your time at meetings, so that allows us to do it when we get those comments, and we can engage staff in that discussion, so thank you very much.
So it's important that everybody comes to these meetings with an equal understanding, that nobody is in a
That's the
position of
purpose.
knowing something more than other commission members. That's the reason for going through staff and having the kind of discussions that we encourage here, as opposed to more one-on-one communications.
And we can disseminate it out to everybody, so, yeah, that's the reason.
Thanks again.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
see you in February.
Everybody drive safe.
Start raining?
get started.
I feel like we're like, time.
It's pretty dry when I got down.
I think it might be like
Yeah.
7:45.
I think after 11 o'clock, it'll start freezing.
So you're gonna drag this on?
No, he's not.
Come on, Victor.
I have a really long report.
Very thorough.
You promised.
It's like getting to the state library.
Could have walked from the house.
Our current agenda identifies 2 delegated items. Plan Commission occasionally will delegate something that essentially is done but needing an I dotting or a T crossing perhaps at most to staff where Indiana code allows that opportunity. So we do have 2 items that, he's back now, have been delegated to staff. If there is anything that's happening or different or new or something to anticipate,
So
staff will update us, but if there's nothing to update, we don't have to
yeah,
run this.
these 2 items are on the delegated items list, so the Unified Development Ordinance, you'll hear that word tossed around pretty much every week.
Or just UDO.
UDO, a short,
UDO.
that's a shorthand for it, but the UDO permits amenity centers within residential subdivisions to be approved administratively. So as a courtesy, we put those items on the agenda as delegated items. That way you all know what's going on, can keep track of what's being approved in the background. So these are all compliant and they're just here for informational purposes at this point, so.
But at whatever point they become finalized and will be dropping off, your update at a meeting will identify that for us. They don't just disappear without
That's correct.
explaining something that's
Yeah.
more for the group.
Exactly, yep. So yeah, these are just 2 residential amenity centers, Osborne Trails North Amenity Center and the Aberdeen North Amenity Center. So
Okay.
that's all we have to add for that.
Thank you. With the reference of the UDO, not sure how much website trolling anybody in the room has done, but there's a couple of places I would encourage you to go if you haven't been there yet on the website. The Unified Development Ordinance has 2 different versions. One's identified as an interactive version where there's a lot of what look like just little index things down the side that you can click and it'll take you exactly where you want to go in an instant. There's also an old-fashioned one where you have to page through and page through and page through. They're great. One thing I always have in front of me too, if you go on the city's website and look at maps, the GIS, Graphical Information Systems, ton of helpful information there. And a lot of times during public hearings, I'll be kind of trolling around on that, thinking, where the heck do you live? Who's that person that's talking to us? Cause you can get ownership ID information and such.
Yeah, so first link here,
Sometimes can take a while to open, but we're in the
Yes.
building, so it goes pretty good.
this is a pretty comprehensive map of city data. Again, we don't need to dive too deep into this, but a very popular tab for this board is the zoning tab. This will show all of the zoning districts within the city. That you can see here.
Well,
And then also the, what can be really helpful is the historical maps. So we go back all the way to 1941.
I spent hours looking at that one. It's
Yeah.
so much, and it's fun.
That seems pretty cool.
To me
And
anyway.
actually,
Seeing when lakes appeared that didn't always exist, things like
yeah,
that.
so since the early 2000s or so, pretty much every year, Hamilton County will provide high resolution aerial map imagery that's geo-referenced specifically to the real location throughout the whole county, so.
the parcel data is current and that will stay current even if you go back to older,
Oh, really?
map,
Yeah.
that won't change.
You'll see all
with it.
those mystery yellow lines in a
You
field.
could turn it off.
They're not crop circles. They're not. Good thought though.
So for example, if you click on a property, you can find a lot of data about that particular property. And then also you can jump to the real property webpage.
See who hasn't paid their taxes yet.
So,
Can you go back to the? map real quick. If you go back to the zoning layer, just kind of a quick shortcut way of finding, since we have so many PUDs in our jurisdiction, this is a kind of a quick, easy way to find those standards. So you have to make sure the zoning tab or the zoning box is checked, but then you click on one of those. And then under more information, it'll take you to the PUD standards and all of the associated amendments. So that's kind of a nice way to find all of the relevant PUD standards, since we have over 100 of them.
That's probably a more direct way to get there with the minimal amount of time. But I've got any number of things saved, and there is a place where all the PUDs exist if you just wanted to go from PUD to PUD to PUD
And
without
we
starting
also
from a
link
map.
them in our staff report. I mean, there'll be multiple ways to get to it, but, so that's just another way to find it.
I find it helpful to look at the elevations, look at the contour lines, topography, sometimes when we're talking about where's the water go? You'll kind of be able to see a darkened spot on a particular parcel, thinking, okay, that might be wet, but is it or not? And then you can actually get to all these contour lines, which I have done on quite a few meetings to figure out, do I have a concern about this or not? So there's some pretty cool stuff. We can probably set up more training, but these were thoughts that I thought might be helpful.
This is a development community, so it may not be updated, but. Yeah. Of course. But this is all just available through the Westfield.
It's on westfield.in.gov.
Can you show them where on the website instead of just Google searching it?
Yeah.
Please.
If we can find it.
We're watching you, it makes it harder, I understand.
You know,
That's for me, that's for sure.
To the point where it's even hard for me to see, like, what's on that screen sometimes. So this would be, what would be the easiest way to?
I just go to that
Maps.
button right there, maps.
Go to maps.
Maps, right there in the middle.
Good idea, Victor. Good idea.
Multiple ways, clearly.
That's a good idea.
So I usually click on this if I'm going to the maps.
That's the first one. I
And
think it is.
there's another click, but it's the first
Right
one
there.
here. Get you right back to where we were.
Okay.
Another
I go through.
Another button that I use a lot here is the
Let's
agendas
bookmark
one.
it.
Again, we'll send you links to them, but
Yeah.
if you wanna see all the other boards and stuff, I mean, they're all listed right here in chronological order.
You can
Anyway,
get everything, or you can just get plan commission or council or whatever other
Under
groups
agendas,
have
we-
occasion to meet.
Yeah, and this is just the homepage, landing screen for the city. So, super easy to get to.
So Kevin, what we were talking about, the literature, like, getting up to speed would be,
yeah, so, if you're interested, and we'll,
or I'll just ask Andre every meeting.
there you go. So, we can go through, we're gonna do a training with you all here in a month, and we can go through some of this again, just to kind of reinforce some of it, but I guess, just to show you how I got here, the city's main page, government, community development. There's maybe other ways to get here, I don't know, that's how I do it. Planning and zoning. As soon as it loads. So this is a lot of information here, so our comprehensive plan, and all of the current amendments to it, thoroughfare plan are all behind this button. So that's a place you'll wanna probably check out and read through the comp plan. We are going through a comp plan update, in 24, but this is the current version, right? So we're still gonna reference it. So that's something to become familiar with. And all of these kind of build on each other, right? So I mean, there's nothing here is replacing the previous version, it's just an additional addendum.
And the comp plan is just compilation of all the things that are in the docket, or that are
No,
on
so
there,
the
is that-
comp plan is like the vision for
Comprehensive
the,
plan is
Right.
our
for the,
high level,
city growth.
we actually wanna be.
Where things should be.
yeah.
And key is it's a recommendation.
Who sets that?
Well, city council
We
will
do.
adopt a comp plan, I think.
Planning Commission, Council, the public will weigh in heavily, so it's a pretty elaborate
Steering committee.
process.
But let me ask a question about that, because I was gonna ask later, but this might be the right time. We're gonna look back in about 2 months at this agenda and pray that we have an agenda like this again sometime.
Maybe not even 2 months.
Yes.
Hoping so.
But in the meantime, I think we have to, we're gonna need some guidance or some thought about the fact, here's a comp plan that's evolving into a new comp plan. How is this gonna fit in, so that we're not sitting in the middle of something and getting, this fits the old, but doesn't fit the new, and, I mean, it's gonna be a little bit of a sticky wicket, I think, on some items coming up.
I agree with you.
So I just think maybe we just need awareness of that, but there may be some suspension of something for a few months until everything is in place. I don't really know the right
Or
answer.
at least a general idea of where it might head, even if we couldn't, pause business, right? What direction is it heading, so it helps us understand what we're gonna do, cause
Keeps
there's,
things from going back and forth
Yeah.
then.
yeah,
I mean, that's the,
yeah.
I think a lot of us were sold on the idea that we're all coming together with a little bit more succinct plan and cohesiveness, but Dr. King, to your point, without having an idea of what the plan is.
Hours of fun for children of all ages. All this stuff is easily bookmarked. I have a lot of them. At City Hall, we do have monitors, keyboards, and a connection to the network. They're not actually PCs. But you can get to all the same stuff at those meetings more easily than bring along your own device, but
public record, there's.
absolutely, yes. So if anybody
UDO's
does like to have things,
355 pages.
thereabouts.
Long, I've read about half of it so far. Plenty to read.
I was gonna say riveting.
Great reading. That's gonna change too. by the
Easy
way.
read.
Yeah,
That's
I
coming.
figured it'd have to.
You're right, and there will be some times throughout the middle of this process that we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna handle a petition that may be proposed in an area that we anticipate changing in the comp plan.
I just don't wanna approve another house if there's a business that wants to come into that area and is more appropriately suited.
Sure, but I mean, and for those of you who I didn't meet, I'm Ashley Albrecht, I'm your board attorney, and, I mean, if a petition comes in and the law is the way it is, that's what you have to consider, so.
I'm not gonna be that guy all night, but this is my last
No,
question.
you're good.
For companies that want to come into Westfield and they're thinking about it, they're not sure, all that kind of stuff, but they're debating it coming in, who do they speak with about potentially finding a location for them that would be suitable?
Yeah, it's gonna be a combination between our team, the planning team, and economic development department. Janelle, Fairman, I knew something, yeah.
Okay.
So she's new to us too, so we're still learning, and she's bringing on a new team too, so there'll be resources here in this building that they'll want in Carmel, right? And we can steer them in the right direction.
She's new to Westfield, but not new to the position, right?
That's,
She's-
well,
She's
she's,
new to, she used to work, she was
She was a
she
deputy
was
in
down
Carmel, wasn't
with Carmel.
yeah,
A lot of experience.
yeah.
Probably heard of Carmel.
They probably, you might have been hired.
Trying to lead everybody to the water on that.
We're gonna annex them soon.
Yeah, oh gosh.
So a couple other folks do have, are you connected here, but there is a Wi-Fi that you can get
That's a good point.
the password for if you bring a device to these meetings. I mean, you can do your own little thing too if you have it, but there is, I think it's on the screen, but you can get a Wi-Fi to be able to connect when you're here.
One other thing while we're on the screen, I just wanted to show you, so here's the comp plan and information, UDO is right here. So,
First I thought it was a comb.
I don't know why who picked the
why.
picture.
That's where you get your good grooming.
Yeah. But as Bob mentioned, there's this interactive version that is pretty slick. You can click around and get places quickly, or the flipping every page version below it. So if you need to print it out, this is probably the one I would use for some reason, but.
If you really have a investment in toner and paper.
Yeah, I was
gonna say.
No, anybody would. Once again, bookmark it, you can get to it.
So, but, yeah, good question.
You mentioned a training. Do you have a date for that yet?
Yeah, So you're stealing my thunder.
Sorry, man.
On
You mentioned it, so I didn't want it to float away.
No, that's good.
The last item on the agenda says Community Development
Yeah,
Department.
I won't have anything left, that's
sorry.
okay.
Do you want me to do
Should've
an update
read.
real quick and then we get back to that?
No, I don't wanna forget.
Future meeting yet?
So we are looking at the workshop meeting in February, which is the 20th, I believe. And I think that's a Tuesday because of the Monday.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, so it'll be a Tuesday, but it'll be back in this room. We have no anticipated agenda items, although I suppose there could be some consent items. So maybe we'll do quick business on those. But there's no workshop items per se that I'm aware of.
Tonight, yeah.
Am I wrong?
I feel like I had one.
Okay, well,
but
maybe.
I'm blanking on one.
Alright, well, that may
We will
alter
see.
things, but right
a
now,
reason to
we're
delay
planning
it.
on the 20th to go through a little bit more in-depth training. We can pull up some of these resources too and kind of refresh where to find some of this stuff, but then we'll go through a little more nuts and bolts as to what this board does and where it fits into the process. Ashley will give some legal perspective and so yeah, so let's plan on the 20th of February for that.
Okay. Ending segment of our agenda each meeting is reports and comments. First is from one plan commissioner to the rest. If there's any questions, thoughts, comments for the group,
Just welcome to the new members.
yeah.
And also kudos Bob and staff for taking some time, those orientation topic sort of things we're just going through. I think, we didn't do that when I joined. I could have used that. It took me a while to get up to speed, so I think you did a nice thing there. Excuse me.
Each meeting, we learn a little bit, hopefully. Item next is city council liaison. An opportunity for the council representative to fill us in on important stuff from the last council meeting.
Quickly, eh? Alright, so first we did the election of council president and VP, that is Patrick Tam and John Dart, respectively. And then we did our appointments to boards and commissions, and as you can see, we got them here tonight a little bit, eh? Then old business, was ordinance 24-01, which first saw an introduction at the last meeting of previous council in December. Public hearing was at our first meeting. I mean, that's the annexing into Adams Township. That's generally the northwest corner of 216th and 31. If you have questions, please feel free to ask regarding that. That'll have be up for a vote at our next council meeting this next Monday. New business, ordinance 24-07, establishing a deputy mayor position. Back in 08, when the city became a city, town to a city, we had a deputy mayor position, but then it got repealed, whatever word you want to use, in 2011. So we've had a chief of staff ever since. So now with the new administration, re-adding a deputy mayor position. Kind of similar story for ordinance 24-08, which is re-establishing a parks department and rec board. So that'll be up for a vote next meeting as well. Ordinance 24-09, amending the salary ordinance, the 2024 salary ordinance. And then our last new business item was ordinance 24-02, which is amending a sign in Urban Apples, which we will see per our next meeting. And that was it.
Thank you. The most important items I always viewed when I used to provide these updates as well as things that are planning and zoning related that have landed at council first and eventually are getting here. So it's helpful to look at the council agendas even if you don't watch the entire meeting or be able to talk to our council rep so you have a little bit of additional information on what's coming our way. Item next, Board of Zoning Appeals Liaison will bring us up to date on what happened at the last BZA meeing.
Which is tomorrow.
You probably haven't been to one in a while.
Well, we'll tell you the next time.
Yeah, there is one tomorrow. A number of items.
We look forward to it.
Yeah. Plat Committee Liaison, that would be me. We haven't had one of those meetings in a while, but they're coming up. Now, Community Development Department, any final words of wisdom?
When's the next plat
When is
committee?
the next plat?
That would,
okay.
that would make sense.
Yeah, there was one scheduled for today, due to the delay in APC appointments, that was kind of a casualty, because the plat committee was just appointed, minutes ago. So the next meeting would be February 12th, it's a Monday, 11 a.m. And there are a couple, overall development plan and primary plats on the agenda for that.
Can somebody put me back on all the meeting notes?
Yeah, I asked that,
Okay,
that happened, it hasn't happened yet,
It
so,
hasn't.
alright. I'll,
just don't wanna miss one.
I'll send a reminder.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the only other thing I really wanted to just kind of quick cover that tonight was, the item that we heard tonight was just a little bit out of sync for our normal process. So I just want everybody to kind of not be confused that, normally what will happen is you will hear an item first at public hearing. And that is at City Hall, those will be held at City Hall, that's the first meeting of this group every month, first Monday. And then, things that go to workshop will actually come, was it 6 weeks later? So the following month's workshop meeting is when those public hearing items will land in your workshop. So there's like a 6-week kind of overlap there in time, so they have time to make, any changes that come out of the public hearing. Prepare those, get those to us so we can get them in front of you for your next workshop. So that's the normal kind of rhythm of a zoning project. This one, since it was really kind of a holdover from last year, and there'd been so much time and delay since hearing it, they wanted to get back in front of you, give a little refresher before having a public hearing on the 5th. So that's not normal, we won't see that happen probably again, but unless something is delayed again for a long period of time, then we may do this again, just as kind of a refresh before we get back into making a recommendation. So just wanted to kind of manage a little expectations, like that we're not, this is not a normal rhythm of a process, so. City Hall will be where public hearings are held on that first meeting, always, and then this workshop meeting will always be in this room.
Out of curiosity, did they ask for the extended timeline? Was that their request?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, they requested it, gosh, at end of the summer, so, and then they put it, I think they put a date on it, I forget, 6 months, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would have needed to ask for an extension at some point anyway, naturally, but I think.
I'd gone back and I was trying to track along with it and I just couldn't find.
Yeah.
Again, it was an oddball type timeline for this one, so, yeah.
So normally it's a little smoother, right, and we don't have any other holdover projects that are gonna fall into this weird timeline, so.
No, please.
I would say, so confirm, we see public hearing number 1, workshop 6 weeks later, then recommendation back at City Hall 2 weeks later.
That's right.
So 8-week cycle.
That was what I was gonna ask, that's perfect.
Yeah.
3 weeks, depending upon
However it falls, yeah.
Yeah,
And sometimes depending upon how many things come up during the public hearing, it could be a little bit longer.
yeah, and petitioner may need a little bit longer to respond and react. Or they may need a second workshop, I mean, there's always some flexibility into that schedule, but yeah, that would probably be a typical timeline.
I do have another question. So from the BZI, didn't have a consent agenda, so I just wanna understand that piece a little bit more. So do those items, those are items we would never have anything to, how do they get on the consent agenda? Can you walk me through that process, somebody?
I'm happy to do that.
If this is too long of a time, I
No,
can.
I mean, I was planning on doing that at the next meeting.
I can wait.
Giving a detailed,
I can wait.
the 30-second version is that it's prescribed pursuant to ordinance
Okay.
on what can be on consent
Okay.
agendas. I'll go through more of that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just don't have any experience in that, but
Yeah, no, you're right. It is different than
Yep.
than other community.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, it's probably a good opportunity to bring this up. I mean, we are contemplating, anticipating an amendment to the UDO that will permanently delegate development plans to staff for approval and really essentially remove the consent agenda items from your agenda. That's something we've talked about for many, many years. There just hasn't been enough traction to get it done. We were close to doing it, then COVID happened and and everything just kind of stopped and in terms of momentum on that, so
And is that's a city council?
that will be ultimately,
Change that.
yes. But plan commission will make a just like a zoning change,
Yeah,
plan
yeah.
commission will make a recommendation on that. City council will ultimately make that
And
change.
what, just out of curiosity, does putting on a consent agenda slow it down?
Sometimes.
So
Okay.
I'll just jump in real quick.
Yeah.
There's been times where we have only had a planning commission meeting because of a consent agenda
I
item.
got you, yeah.
So with my experience, seeing how that might trail a development or something, it would just, an unnecessary part of the process, because whether it be new APC members or the public, whomever, when I make updates on my page, that people are confused, what is this consent agenda item?
Right, yeah.
So moving that to a delegated spot helps clear that up of, hey, this is a delegated item that staff is responsible for anyway. It's not that we have a say over it
Sure.
whatsoever. There was a meeting, for instance, last year where some neighbors showed up that were against something that was happening, but it was something that had been previously decided years and years before when the PUD was first adopted, and not something that we have any control over.
Got it. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, the question about does it delay approvals, I think yes, sometimes.
Sure.
Because we may finish a development plan review, determine that something's compliant, and then have to wait 2-4 weeks sometimes,
Sure.
depending on, to
Yeah.
get on
And
an
it's
agenda.
literally just a formal vote that we really can't vote against anyway.
It's something that you have to
Yeah,
approve,
okay,
it's,
yeah.
if it's compliant.
Okay, yep.
It's a ministerial approval, and so it cuts out a little bit of time.
Okay.
And adds efficiency, like though we did on this agenda, I mean, we will certainly be, having a section that is still.
You'd still tell us what you
Yeah,
did
informing
between
you of
meetings.
what
Yeah,
these are,
okay.
I mean.
Better, because there's a lot of good things about
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
This is essentially the zoning review of a permit is really what these are.
Sure.
But Kevin, a lot of our neighboring communities are already operating this way, correct?
I don't know, maybe.
Sorry, I've been kind of working on the research for this ordinance, and Carmel does do this for 2 zones. And then there are a number of different communities in Hamilton County who do this for either all or some of their development plans. And I believe that by statute, this board still has to sign off on the findings of the development plan, so it will be still in the minutes for Mr. Jorge to sign off on. I believe, I need to check that.
All right. So,
If this change is largely going to make the consent agenda go away totally, I don't need to keep bringing up, why don't we put the minutes on the consent agenda?
I'll get into this more next, but
It just seems
I
like.
think you're right,
that-
but it's because it's structured differently, they wouldn't necessarily have to.
Okay, I was confused on it, and I figured I would ask you or someone with a legal
For those of you who don't know,
education.
I was in-house with Carmel for a decade, so when you said Carmel, I was like, what? But, they have a hearing officer process, so
Yeah, they do it differently.
all right,
that would be,
that's something for
like,
us to
they sign
explore
off
too.
of it as,
Yeah, the director signs, yeah.
yeah.
So, anyway, that may be introduced as early as next month, it may be a little bit, but that's something that, we anticipate coming relatively quickly. So really, truly then, this board really is just focusing on zoning changes, right? PUDs and PUD amendments, and in the event that there's a straight rezone, which is rare, it happens occasionally. That's what this board will be primarily reviewing and weighing in on.
And there's a separate committee that does development, like the new developments that are coming in and those types of things to get approved in the first place.
Well,
If that's an in-depth question.
yeah, there's probably a lot of layers to that question. Yeah, I mean, the actual development plan or subdivision plat is reviewed by the plat committee, which is a subcommittee of this group. The overall development plan, the detailed development plan, which is what I was just describing would be at a staff level for approval. But then by that point, really, it's checking boxes, right? It's making sure that all of the rules are being followed. We're not establishing rules at that point, we're just confirming that the plans meet the rules.
Got it.
Through a plan review process. Does that help?
Mhm.
Yeah. We'll walk through, kind of the timeline of a project from beginning to end. And hopefully they'll all start to make sense where different things fall in the life of a project. There's a lot of different steps along the way, and we'll go through those next time. Well, the next one of these. Yeah.
Is it your expectation, and this is kind of general interest to everybody, but particular interest to two of us, that there will be a Wednesday morning pre-meeting?
Yeah, that's a good
You'll hear us
question.
refer to a pre-APC meeting every now and then, or a some other kind of meeting where, without making decisions and getting into details, because can't do that, we don't assemble a quorum, but just to make sure we have an agenda that's complete, will flow properly, that people like you and I that may have to be following this during the course of a meeting really know it a little bit better.
I understand. We can work out the time.
still-
If 9:30 Wednesday mornings doesn't work for you,
It's not an in-person meeting, it's a
we can
call-in
adjust
thing
with
where,
time.
To make it work anytime, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we are expecting to continue that, so.
okay, and it's 9:30 on Thursday for the pre-plats.
That sounds right.
Yeah, there seems to be still a lot of confusion about calendar entries. I don't have a lot of things that need to be there. It seems like I get calendar entries in gigantic bunches. And they get confused because of an extra Monday or a extra something.
Yeah.
So, I don't wanna be sounding like a complainer, but I know how to keep track of when meetings occur, but there's, I don't have the next plat committee meeting is not on my calendar.
Oh, it's not.
I know when it's gonna happen, I'll be there, but
Do you have any sense of how 2024 is looking? I mean, it's been light, we've had a bit of a disruption in the volume.
It won't be like, we're already yeah, if we're anticipating at a minimum 6 or 7 PUD or PUD amendments filing next week. I mean, that's the ones we know of today. I mean, there may be more. A lot of people wait till the week of filing and then reach out and schedule meetings, so there may be more.
Do you have a good taste of how many of those were just kind of holdovers or new or?
Most of them.
That's awesome.
waiting for a period of time when there's a reason to actually make those submittals.
Yeah.
All right, if there isn't anything else to come up here, item last is motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. That was Victor that motioned. And Mike, or motioned and Mike seconded. And we can do this also by voice vote. Everybody in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed to adjourning?
Who wants to stay longer?
We are adjourned.
Without the ice storm.
I meant sarcastically, I said it way louder than I meant.
So Kevin, you're gonna send me the stuff on the BZA?
Yeah, use one.
7